at the age range, think of maybe. Yeah. Okay. Let me use the. How's that? Any better? Oh. Well, good to see all of you. I hope that everybody's been, safe and relatively unscathed by these storms. It's so hard to see this kind of level of disaster and devastation in some of the locations. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we've seen this since the early '80s, '82 and '83. Joe, we were at the restaurant in '82 or '83. We had to close because there was no drinking water, and we all went up to Felton Grove and dug people out of their houses. And I spent a whole day digging out a Volkswagen van. Anyway, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Welcome to Sereno, which is now Sereno Christie's. We have the good fortune of being able to purchase the Christie's International brand. So we've got a global presence now. I don't know that we'll need it too much in Santa Cruz, but we do have it. And appreciate you all being here. This is the first in a series of talks that we're doing, and I titled the series "There Are No Stupid Questions." And the reason I entitled it "There Are No Stupid Questions" because for 34 years, going back thinking about it, the question I've been asked more than any other question in my 34 years of doing real estate is from a client that'll come and say, "Do you mind if I ask you a stupid real estate question?" I've heard that so many times, and my response is usually, when it comes to your house, which is your largest asset, and when it's also the centering place of your entire life, there really aren't any stupid questions. The only stupid questions are the ones that you didn't ask and you wish that you had asked. So we'll have a series. This is the first in that series, and something interesting happened the other day as I was sort of preparing for this, and I was sitting at the footbridge going over to San Lorenzo, and I watched a full propane tank coming down the river, sort of bobbing, and it looked like it was coming down the rapids in Deliverance or something. And I was, I mused. I wondered what would happen if it hit the bridge and sort of blew up. But the next thought was, well, gosh, if a propane tank is coming down the river, what else is in the water? And it seemed like a good kind of precursor for the talk tonight. And most of our infrastructure in our homes, we don't really want to think about much. It's kind of nice to just turn the light switch and turn on the faucet and flush the toilet and forget about it from there. And that's as long as the lights actually come on and the water comes on and we can wash our clothes, and the toilets will flush and they're clean enough for our dogs to drink out of the toilet. So that's when we start to think about these things. But it's getting harder and harder to be a responsible homeowner and by extension, a responsible community member. With population growth, environmental concerns, and now I don't know about anybody else, but for the last 2 or 3 years, it seems like some kind of a climate-related disaster or challenge has become the norm of everyday life. And I don't. That's not going to. Doesn't appear that it's going to stop, and all those things are going to persist, and all of those things create more details, more things we need to know about and think about with our own property. Because if you think about it, if you're a rural property owner and you have a septic system, you're actually the chief engineer of your own wastewater treatment plant. Same principles, they work the same way. The big sewer treatment facility down on California Street works remarkably similar to what you have at your home. So it's getting less and less possible for us to turn a blind eye, to keep it out of sight, out of mind, to not think about it, because there's a series of things that are coming, guidelines, rules, regulations. It's mind-boggling. Almost every year at the first of the year, we have to learn all kinds of new things that are coming down the pike that are going to affect people who own their homes and by extension, the community. So, some of those things are, low flow retrofit toilets and showers, which everybody hates the showers, right? New rules on HVAC systems, water heater strapping, in certain areas, not necessarily in Santa Cruz, but you have to have a retrofitted EPA cleared wood stove or fireplace device because of environmental concern. So 2 years ago, we had a sewer lateral ordinance. All these things are related and they're going to keep coming. And it's the purpose of doing these talks is so that we can be hopefully proactive enough to kind of be thinking about it in advance rather than thinking about it in an emergency when your effluent is overflowing in your yard or there's some other issue or you're trying to sell your house, because that's where all things come up. But also, so we don't have the luxury of not paying attention anymore. So hopefully this series that we're doing is, it's kind of, we're trying to get you up to speed a little bit for those that are interested. I think it's remarkable that this many people are out at night in Santa Cruz to hear about septic tanks. I don't know what that says about us. Is this like a COVID after effect? We're so bored. Yeah.
We all want to hear what you do with our shit.
We're getting there. We got these guys have so much experience. They got plenty of stories. So anyway, I'm gonna turn it quickly over to my colleague Marika Strauss, who's going to kind of moderate. All of you that have septic systems, your biggest concern is going to be your own system. And so what we're going to try and do is run through the big picture, what's happening, why it's happening, what are the new guidelines and all that. We're trying not to get stuck in each person's individual system. We'll have questions and answers at the end, so that, and we're happy to stick around for however to talk about your particular system. But every system is different, and it's if we get lost on one system, it's not going to apply to everybody else in the room. So, Marika?
Right. I'm Marika. So today we have the pleasure of introducing Ken Klausing over here, who's in black with his logo appropriate shirt, A+ Construction. So he's the owner of A+ and also a septic contractor. And then we have Eric Gobler here, who is a civil engineer. And I think between the two of you, we have about 80+ years of experience when it comes to septic related things. So I think we're going to be in good hands tonight with questions that you all might have. So in that vein, we do anticipate and hope you all have a lot of questions, but because we have a short amount of time, we're asking that you use this whiteboard in the back next to the tall gentleman, Daniel, who's got the tropical cool shirt there. We've got Velcro markers that you can use. And so the idea there is on the left of that whiteboard is questions for the speaker that may apply to everyone in this room. And then on the right is questions that are probably more specific to your particular instance that you may sit there and think, yeah, that's a pretty unique one. I think that might just be best addressed. We haven't asked Eric and Ken, but we're going to hope they'll stay over a little bit extra for some of those more unique questions that may feel not as applicable to the entire audience. So that's kind of the idea that we have.
If we don't get to them, you can put your email down and we can make a call.
Yeah, we intend to make sure you get your questions, because the whole goal, like Tom said, is this is an educational opportunity. We want to educate the public so you all are as informed and we move forward in a positive way. So that's what that is about. Like Tom said, we will have questions and answers. at the end, but please feel free to just get up and stretch. It's a good way to do that as well by putting your question there. Secondly, I want to mention the bathrooms are towards the back and open door over there. Feel free to stretch and move about, be comfortable, do some yoga if you need to, move around. I mean, poop conversations are always interesting, but if you find the need to get some blood circulation, don't hesitate to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to let these two gentlemen introduce themselves a little more, and then we'll go through sort of a series of questions that we have. Like any talk, it's not going to go as we structured it and planned it. It's going to be organic to some degree, but know that we do have a flow in mind. So we'll go with the flow, no pun intended.
And we can count the entendres, the septic and the poop entendres as we go.
So if we have 80 years of experience up here and I have 10, Ken, what is that? Yeah, my name is Eric Gobler, civil engineer. Cal Poly graduate in 1975. Degree in environmental engineering, grew up on a dairy, and learned at a very young age the importance of land and water, the environment in particular, and how to make sure you take care of things properly. And we had a septic system also. In 1980, I went to work for an environmental regulatory agency right out of college, and did that work for 33 years. But in 1980, we were going to build a house, came from the Atascadero, down the Paso Robles area, and it needed a septic system design and a grading plan. I thought, oh, maybe I can do this. I'm a civil engineer. So that was my first septic system in 1980. I started consulting on the side that year, and I've now done it for 42 years of septic system design. So a lot of experience, and I'm sure Ken and I have had much of the same experience on septic systems. A question about the audience. How many of you are real estate agent people or work for that? And how many are just regular homeowners? You guys aren't regular people. How many people have septic systems? Okay, you don't have to raise your hand on this question, but how many of you pumped your septic tank in the last 5 years? Okay, good. You're way ahead of the curve. Those that haven't, what we talk about tonight will probably help you answer some questions of what needs to be done. Yeah, with that, let me just, one thing about Santa Cruz County, we built a house, we've had a cabin up in Mount Herman for many years. In 2015, we decided that we were going to move to the area, retire, build a house. And so my first experience with Santa Cruz County was we have to have an enhanced treatment septic system because of our soil on our property. So I've been designing treatment systems in San Luis Obispo County and Monterey County for many years, but never had the privilege of working with Santa Cruz County. So it was quite an experience. And I will say this, I had heard many horror stories about Santa Cruz County, and very few of them turned out to be true for us. It was a very pleasant process, very expensive. There's no question about expense, but the process was really not bad. With that, I want to say that even though I've been doing this for many years, I'm on the county's list of the qualified professional, I guess we're qualified providers now as a designer. I do not come to speak on behalf of the county. I don't come to speak on behalf of anybody else that does septic system design. So anything that I say is just from my own experience. I will say Santa Cruz County, the people that do the regulation, environmental health services, have a huge job. I think there's 5 staff that oversee the 30,000 septic systems in the county, and there's only 28,000. Okay, but they have there's a huge workload for them, and it takes time to get permits to go through the process. And then that's what people like Ken and I have experience and work. It's plenty of work, but we all need to work together to make this work. The reason that we have these rules, and they are becoming more and more intense, is because of the need for protecting the environment and protecting our water quality in particular. And some of the stuff that you saw going down the creek was septic tank effluent from the center of the valley. I'm positive. So don't go swimming in the ocean right away. Ken?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm kind of disjointed. I just got back from Hayward and I've been driving all over the place trying to find some granite countertops for a house that I'm working on. So I'm just kind of disjointed thought-wise. So I'll start off with, agreeing with him as far as you don't want to flush it one day and drink it the next, right? That's our goal, is to care for the groundwater, and he happens to be in a fast perk area. So the regulations are a lot more stringent because it goes down quick. So if you live in a sandhills area or a really silty area where it goes down quick and the high groundwater, then you're going to be polluting the groundwater. And a lot of people are on a well. I've been on a well for 38 years, and it's I think about that. I think about that. When I first started out, my first house I built here in Santa Cruz County was in 1977, and we bought two lots and built 2 houses. And during those times, if there's maybe a couple of old timers who remember, you could go down in 4 hours and get a permit. 4 hours. I got 2 permits in 4 hours, and it cost me $575. I can still remember that. So a lot's changed, and I built about 160 homes in Santa Cruz County. I built subdivisions. I've done everything. And at one point, I told my wife, I said I was recuperating from a couple operations. I said, I'm going to recreate myself. I can't stand going down to the planning department anymore. And because I would just get a rush, my heart would be pounding. And I said, I'm just going to buy a tractor and a dump truck, and I'm just going to do dirt work. Anyway, so here I am with a bunch of dump trucks later and a bunch of tractors, just enjoying my life as a senior citizen. I don't look at myself as a senior citizen because I still work 8 hours every day, and I'm way past senior citizens time. But it's I love helping people, and I love the work I do, and so it's very satisfying. And it's always funny, it was funny that he asked about the pumping. I always get this same question almost every time I go out to see somebody. My septic system has worked for 28 years. All of a sudden it just stopped. What's going on? And I said, I always tell them, it's been slowly getting bad, and because you haven't been inspecting it, looking at the tank, seeing that when you get home and you're taking your showers and all the water is going, the septic tank is rising up inside, and sometimes it's going back up into the pipe up close to your house because the leach lines are slowly failing because you haven't pumped, or from roots, or just sludge from grease or something like that. So I always tell people when I'm out there on the job, I'll say, I'll inform them that they are the president of their own sewer treatment plant. You are responsible. You're not going to call up the county and they're not going to come out and fix it for you. You have to get it fixed. So I really try with the education to make sure that the tanks are accessible with risers. So if they want to, they have a problem, they can take the risers off and not have to dig down 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes I've had them recently 6 feet deep and with no risers. They're typically a square or a round pipe that comes up off the top of the tank so that the lid of the tank is right on the surface. Sometimes with only a few inches of soil covering it. So if you have a problem, you can just take the soil off, pull the lid off, look and see what's going on. And I always,
Not just a tank, the septic field as well, correct? That there's in the septic field, not just where the tank.
well, what happens is, on most tanks, there's about 12 inches of air in every tank. Everybody always says, my tank is full. I said, it's always full. This is the way our systems are designed. So this, the outlet from the inlet to the outlet is either from 3 to 4 to 6 inches difference. So when you flush, it goes into what's called the inlet tee. And I don't understand the physics of this, but when you flush, the turds of the paper go down about 3 to 4 feet on the pipe, and they pop back up. And then we call that the mat. And that's where the bugs, the little Pac-Man are eating, all the paper and the turds. So at that point, if you're flushing bleach, any kind of caustic chemicals down in your septic system, you are killing all those little Pac-Man that are eating everything. When those Pac-Man are not eating everything, then it crosses over into the second section of your tank, and then it allows eventually all that debris to get over into your leach lines to clog it up. And that's where I get called, because they haven't been looking at it, they haven't been checking it. They flushed a bunch of grease. I had one about 2 years ago. A Chinese lady, my massage therapist for years, she called me up. She says, we just put a new system in, and a really reputable contractor that I like, we're friends, put it in, 5 years earlier. And I looked at it. I just could not understand. I just looked at it. I had my foreman come out, and we looked at it. And I said, Sophie, have you been putting grease down here? Oh, no, we don't put grease down there. But you could see it floating. You could see it floating. And I'll get into some details. Well, there's a lot of people that think that they should not put their toilet paper down. They have a little can and they put it there. I said, Sophie, is that what you do? And she says, yes. I said, well, especially my theory, the engineer could tell me if I'm wrong, but the paper, especially if you have grease and a lot of things, it help coagulate it and keep it right there in the first section of your septic tank, because you have two. The first section is where the turd and paper go, and then there's a crossover in the tank, and you're only supposed to have water going into the second section. And so I kept looking at it, and I thought, I think this is greased up. So we put our camera down into the leach lines, and sure enough, within 5 years in Fastburg sand, it was completely clogged up. So I ended up, there's a little tool that we use sometimes. It's a remediator. It's a unit that you can buy, and we put in the septic tank, and it puts air down where there's no air typically in the septic tank, and it allows those little Pac-Man bugs. Yeah. Anyway, I get talking.
No, it's great, and we want to hear all these details, but I just want to make sure first we zoom out a little bit, just kind of let's set a little context. This is good, and we want to hear more about the Pac-Man. I can see people taking notes, and people are excited about Pac-Man, and we're going to get there. But I just want to first take us kind of a broader. So thank you, Ken and Eric, for introducing yourselves. Thank you for being here on your just volunteering your time to help educate. Yeah, time to go home.
And would you say that we're not on tour? This is kind of this probably is it. Maybe, unless you're there and you're nice and you asked me to come back.
Correct. That's affirmative. That's the plan. That nothing goes as planned, though, as we know. All right. So like I said, the idea is we've got some questions that are slated to help us just kind of flow through this. And the first question is, again, just zooming out here. And Eric and Ken, as you both know, as we've all talked, these questions are for both of you. You guys just team together to help us understand, but we want to start just zoom out. What is the acronym LAMP. What does that stand for? And why are we talking about septics? Help us understand this. Remembering that some people might not totally even understand what a septic is, and some maybe having lived with septic for 40, 50 years.
Okay, perfect. Answer your question, yes, there's risers on these ships too. We can get into that later. LAMP, Local Agency Management Program. Where did that come from? In the 1970s, the State Water Resources Control Board came into action. The result of that was that the regulations on wastewater, and particularly also on septic systems, was transferring from US EPA to the state. The Water Resources Control Board broke up the county or the state into 9 regional boards. The Central Coast Regional Board number 3 covers the area from Santa Barbara through Santa Cruz. Each of the regional boards, because of the new regulations on septic systems that started, I guess, under review in the late 80s and 90s, the state board adopted the on-site wastewater treatment system policy in 2013. When they did that, they gave all the regulatory agencies that regulate septic systems 5 years to come up with a management program for their county, in the case of Santa Cruz, for Santa Cruz County, that deals with the nuances of the county and the conditions that are different here than maybe on the desert community. So that's where the LAMP began, the Local Agency Management Program. Every regulatory agency or every county was given 5 years to develop those regulations. Santa Cruz County didn't make it in time. So in May of 2018, the state became the responsible agency for implementing very specific rules in the counties that didn't have their programs established. So if you had shallow water, if you had steep slopes, if you needed a treatment system because of the conditions of the property, unless you could put in a conventional septic system, you then had to get a permit with the Water Quality Control Board. You probably have heard the horror stories about that. A year to get a septic system permit in many cases. So that was the time period from 2018 to October 2021. And that's when the Water Board, the Central Coast Water Board adopted the Santa Cruz County LAMP. With that adoption, all the regulatory authority for septic systems, whether it was a treatment system or a special case, then came back to the county. So the responsibility to go to the Water Board disappeared at that point. The regulations, however, were basically the same, except they put in some better conditions because of, you're very familiar with the conditions up here. Small lots, steep slopes, lots of trees, lots of water. So there were some good requirements that were added for Santa Cruz County. And to get a permit to fix a septic system that had one of those conditions, we now went to the county to get the permit. So that came into effect in October of 2021. It had not been adopted by the Board of Supervisors. So the state said, implement it as it is approved until the Board of Supervisors approves it. And so we recently heard August to October of 2022, the Board of Supervisors was having hearings on the septic system, and that was on the LAMP. It was basically just to approve what had already been approved by the Water Quality Control Board. So the rules, the board acted, and they approved, the Board of Supervisors approved it. They changed a little bit of the language, but the rules are no different on septic systems from 2021 to today. So if you hear people saying the rules are all different, yeah, they are. They changed in October in 2021. They didn't change this year. The Board of Supervisors approved them, but the rules basically are the same. And so we can get into some of those details if there's questions about the
Yeah,
rules.
I
but-
think the important thing is, this has been coming for 30 or 40 years. Slowly, it's been percolating through the system, and finally it's here. It was always going to be here. It was just a question of when it would get here. So Santa Cruz had no control or no ordinances regarding septics prior to 1983. So, and a stunning number of septic systems, of that 27,000 septic systems, were installed well before 1983. So part of what's happening is those systems fail over time. And so that all this is rising to the surface. It's percolated through the.
On that point, one of the things that is really good about the Santa Cruz lamp is that if you have a septic system that was not permitted or doesn't meet the current regulation, the rules allow you to implement a new system with slightly less restrictive requirements. You still have to go to a professional person to help you get a design and get a permit for it. But the lamp gave some reduction in what the requirements would be. If you had gone to the water board to get the permit, they don't, I'm not going to say they don't care. They're in San Luis Obispo. They're not going to come up here and check out the system to see what's going on. And that's why the permit process was very onerous. But yeah, the rules are much easier because of the lamp, but they're much more stringent than they used to be.
Yeah. And why should we care about any of this? A couple of things are, 95% of the drinking water in the city of Santa Cruz comes from surface water in the San Lorenzo River. 50% of the drinking water in San Lorenzo Valley comes from surface water. There's 8,000 private wells in Santa Cruz County. And a remarkable percentage of the water that goes through the septic system goes in eventually into groundwater recharge in the various groundwater basins in Santa Cruz County. So it's for drinking water, it's for environmental concerns. And so there are legitimate reasons, if there's changes in the rules, it's not an arbitrary thing just to punish people or make them spend money. There's, we all love living here. That's why we're here. We sometimes say we're in paradise, but there is a price to pay for living in paradise.
The one thing I wanted to say is that we actually talked to the head of environmental health about this meeting and asked them a lot of questions and told them what we're going to say. And we told them that we were not going to bash the environmental health because we're not. And they're following the rules and they're trying to help us. But at this point, with most people, when they're selling their house, they're going to be hit with some large costs to make repairs. That's just the way it is. Because I've told a lot of people there's seniors that can't afford these kind of systems, and I've just gone and fixed it. I've just fixed it. And I've told all the inspectors that sometimes I just do that. I have a heart, and but for the most part, we need to fix it, have it set so that it's not polluting the groundwater. But with this new lamp, the requirements are the onerous part of it is that I can, as a level, I'm a level 1. I think you're all the way up to 3, and he can design. I can't design. I can repair. I can do simple repairs. So what the lamp has done is it's thrown more time and more money into making sure that the testing for your particular property is appropriate. Then that's going to be long lasting. The county would say, if you went down, say, you would ask them, how long does my leach line last? Well, for the most part, 20 to 40 years without redwood trees right next to it, or almost any kind of tree next to your leach line. But anyway, so the expense is hiring an engineer to design a system in, especially in a bad area. Or if, when you're selling, remodeling, doing any kind of building over, there's that 500 feet, you have to have a new, typically an engineering system every time for any kind of building now. So that's where the expense comes in.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So we're aware there's a lot of questions coming in, a lot of specifics, and I just want to again acknowledge that we will get to them. But thank you guys for helping us just kind of again set the context. So next question for you guys. What changes? So we're going to start zooming into content, right? So we're going to get specific. We know that's why a lot of you are here. So what changes with these new guidelines? What do people, this audience of again, both realtors, homeowners, what are these changes to the new guidelines?
I'll start, and you can kind of wrap up. I guess when you say changes, are we talking about changes since October 2021?
So there's, and maybe explain for the difference between July 2023 and the changes that passed in office.
Okay. Yeah, so you mentioned July 1st, 2023. So the LAMP that was adopted by the Water Board in 2021, and then I guess certified or whatever by the Board of Supervisors this last year. In it, that whole time, it's had some requirements in there for what they call point of sale. So there's going to be more intense requirements when you sell a property. It's not going to be just get a septic tank pumper to come out and pump the tank and give a report and sell the house. It'll be more intense than that. So those point of sale changes begin in July 1st of 2023. If you're interested in being a part of that process, developing, there's nothing specific in the LAMP about what point of sale requirements really need to be. So environmental health is faced with the challenge of developing something that works well for a potential buyer, protects the environment, and satisfies the intent of the rule. Yep.
So when I talked to Heather, she's kind of heading up the environmental health. She said that it basically won't be any different with the point of sale the way they're looking at it right now for the next year or 2 years till it's fully implemented, where every realtor they have to have a sign off with an inspection, especially from the pumper, to sell a property. And I've been astounded over the years how many realtors don't have any idea what a septic tank is. They try to avoid it because they don't know, and then they don't have it pumped, they don't have it checked out, and then I come along 6 months later when they have a failure, and they say, I just bought this house 6 months ago, and my realtor never told me. I said, that's a crime. That's why this point of sale, is needed, because if you were the buyer, I've had realtors come and say, can you just fix this so this works, so I can pass the test? I said, no, I'm not going to do that, because somebody else is going to buy that, and then they're going to say, well, you said you fixed it. If I fix it, I fix it. I'm not going to make it pass for you to make a little bit more money, because you get lawyers and you get problems past the point, because at that point they have no money. They've spent buying the house, and then all of a sudden they're looking at a $70,000 to $100,000 engineered system.
So what the county's looking for around the point of sale process is they want the history of the septic system. They want all the information that kind of come to the fore. So they're involving the sellers of the property in a disclosure process, anything they know about the system. But they're also telling the buyers at the same time is, if you buy this property and you don't understand what you're buying, you don't know, is the tank undersized? Have there been issues in the past? Is it subject to groundwater so that in the wintertime it tends to fail. There's all these questions around septics. They want all that information to come to the fore during the sale process so that, where this is going to affect all of us who have septic systems is if you want to go and build an ADU, this is all going to come out. If you want to add a bedroom, this is all going to come out. If you want to remodel, this is all going to come out. If you have a bad pumpers report in the future, this is all going to come out because the county tracks that. If you have a failure, this is all going to come out. So, the era of not knowing what you have for a septic system and not having to reveal anything to the potential buyer of a property, that's gone. It's gone by the wayside. So, we don't want to bash realtors either or the county, but it's, we're involved now in the process. We have to make sure that you as a seller of a property are fully aware of your disclosure obligations. And we have to, if we're representing the buyer, we have to tell the buyer, hey, if you're thinking about adding an ADU, down the road next year, you should not buy this house with a septic system unless you understand what you're buying. What kind of soil do you have? Is there running water on the property? Where's the setbacks from the property line? All those things are going to come into the fore. Heretofore, for the most part, selling your house, you get a septic pump. As long as it passes the 20-minute leach flow test, you're good to go, and nobody asks any further questions. But that's probably the biggest change. Stricter guidelines for treating the effluent, and then the fact that when you interact with the county on any of those processes, you're going to have to understand what you have. So
right this minute, they're not enforcing it.
right,
But they're in the next few months.
Yeah.
They need to enforce it because if you're the buyer or even the seller, you don't want to pass it along and then have a lawyer come back and say, you're paying for a new system because you did this.
So there's two, just real quick, there's two things there. One is what Tom was talking about, the regulations are being applied differently. Those things all change with the lab. So there's more stringent requirements for slope, percolation, nitrogen reduction, groundwater. So there's all of those things have changed. And if you add a bedroom or add an ADU, you have to go, the septic system is going to guide what you can do and can't do on your property. That's basically the bottom line. The one thing I want to say about point of sale, if you are interested in the regulations that are going to be developed for the point of sale process, there's a handout back there with a website. You can put your name, you can get your name into the county. They're going to set up a technical advisory committee, information from the public, and I hope all real estate people will be involved in that. And that would be a way to get involved in developing the specific point of sale requirements that are underway right now.
So I recognize you have a lot of questions going back there. And as mentioned, it's one thing to have a plan, it's another to just go with the organic flow. So I suggest we start looking at some of these questions because I think the ones on the left, are kind of applicable to this entire audience. So Daniel, if you'd be so kind, use the projection of your voice to start with question number 1 up there, and let's get into the nitty gritty juice.
So it says, how do you know if you live on a fast perk soil? Is this information listed in a typical septic inspection report?
No, it's not listed in a septic inspection report. It is online, however. So if you go to the environmental health website and you click on, there's a little link on there that says septic repairs, upgrades, and there's another one that says documents and forms and documents. If you click on that forms and documents and you have your assessor parcel number, you can go, there's a link to their GIS website. And on that link is more information than you can believe about what environmental health knows about your property. The value to that is that it helps you move forward. And in that information, there's a little tab marked utilities, and you can go in there and it talks about, it's not fast perk, it talks about nitrogen required nitrogen reduction required areas. And those are fast perk areas. They're primarily in the San Lorenzo Valley, Mount Herman, all the Sand Hills area in the valley, and then Valencia Creek watershed and the Silva Beach. But that information is on the county's website.
So one thing we would recommend as a proactive step for all of us in this room is go to the county GIS system and it'll just give you an overview of your property. If you have is it on greater than a 30-degree slope? Is there a stream running through it or a wintertime drainage running through it? Where's your setbacks? All the things that will determine the degree of difficulty in the future of upgrading a system. You can be proactive and you can just get a feel for where your property is.
And we'll be able to understand that?
No, but you can you can understand a little bit of it, and you can ask for help from people like us, and we can help you. One of the other best things to do proactively is you can go online and download. It's free and it's public record information. Everyone that has a septic system has a file in the digital database at the County Environmental Health, and you go online, you click the button, you put in your APN, and it's going to spit out if your original permit, the original studies that were
And if you
done,
don't have a permit?
was granted, every pumping report
Yeah,
that you've
that's
had,
up.
because the pumpers are required to submit that. If you pump every 5 years and you've owned it for 20 years, you've got at least 4 pumping reports in there. You can kind of trace the history. If you had a recent test pumping and the leach flow was good for 20 minutes and everybody thought it was great, but then you go back for the last 20 years and realize that every other time that you've pumped it, there's been issues cited with it. That's a system that's got some issues. So
So on a regular pumping, they don't do the 20-minute flow test unless it's for sale.
Yeah.
So it's worth it to have them do that when they pump it, just so that you can make sure that your leach line is not 50% done or 90% done, that it's still in really good work. If you turn the hose on full blast, put it in the outlet of the tank and no water comes back, you still have a good leach line. If it comes back within 10 minutes, it's starting to fail. So it's time to start thinking about talking to an installer and an engineer, and depending on where you're at, and start being proactive so that when it does fail, then you're there with the permit in hand, ready to do it and know what to do.
I pulled up a random file from a parcel that we worked on. This is a history of that septic system. So as a real estate agent, I always pull up the history of it because I don't necessarily trust just the last pump that was done. Was that pump done in summer, or was it done on a day like last week with a tsunami of water running through it? So those are two things you can do. And if you have questions, they will answer questions and give you some sense of your site, what's going on there, and help you walk you through the GIS information at the county. It may take a while to get their time, but they will do that. So all of those are proactive. If you were thinking of adding that ADU and going down there a year from now, I would already be looking at that information. So in advance, if you're going to sell your house 6 months from now, go get this information now. Don't wait till the day after you put up the sign.
All right. Thank you, guys. Again, all these questions could be, hour talks, just
Oh, yeah,
each question, and we recognize that. So Daniel, can you read the next question for us, please?
Yes. Other than grease, bleach, what are the other easy no-nos for kitchen sinks? Coffee grounds, meat that goes in garbage disposal and may contain grease, etc.
So it's like a Ken question?
I'll take
Okay.
Let the engineer do it.
Okay. All right.
There's a handout back there. It's called Care and Feeding of Septic Tanks. That's something I put together.
And if we run out of them, feel free to jot your email down there and we'll email you guys the incredible wealth of information that Eric shared with us.
But it identifies some of the do's and don'ts of things that go in there. You know, cigarette butts, gasoline, I would say any petroleum product is not good. Monterey County requires, if you're going to have a garbage grinder in your kitchen, that you have 500 gallons more capacity in your septic tank. So garbage grinders are not real friendly with septic systems because you have larger pieces of organics that don't break down like human waste. It's already been digested. Coffee grounds are not good. Wipes, those sanitary wipes, don't ever put those in your septic tank because they will not decompose and they will only plug the thing completely up. Chemicals of all kinds.
Condoms.
Or down the sewer.
Yeah, or any of those products, you know. Yeah. The things you don't, well, there's a note on there. If you won't eat it, can't eat it, don't put it in your septic tank. So.
All right, Daniel, can you share the next question with us?
Yes, there's some that are kind of personal ones, so maybe I'll goes over to the other one and then we can email you the answer. Number 4, can you supercharge Pac-Man in your system to be more efficient?
As with additives.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. Enhanced treatment systems, that is becoming the thing in Santa Cruz County. You heard about the treatment systems that cost $30,000 or $40,000. Most of those put air into the system. So, and you add oxygen to, you make an aerobic system out of an anaerobic system, and you're going to get better breakdown. Some people put, well, there's a lot of septic tank products that people put in. I don't know the enzymes. I'm not sure how much they do. They don't hurt. I'm not sure how much could they do. I have a good friend that used to put a pound of liver and 2 bags of Fleshman's yeast, and he said that he never had to have his septic tank pumped out. I don't know if that's
Eat lots of meat.
Okay, and the next one is, my septic is working fine. What needs to be done to pass septic inspection when I sell?
There's a lot of potential questions there. It's not just the septic tank, it's the septic tank and the leach field. So we were talking about a flow test. The tank should be pumped out. It needs to be clean. The baffle needs to be in place. It should have a filter on the effluent side. It should have risers so that it can be inspected regularly. I mean, all of those things go into helping keep the septic system working properly. The leach field is going to be the key, though. If the leach field is not functioning properly, or if you live in an area where you have shallow seasonal water or a creek nearby, those are going to impact your leach field, and those things are going to be revealed during this point of sale process that we're going to get into. So it's going to be site specific. I can't really answer that.
That's why you want to know about your system before you put the house on the market, because if you don't know about it, the buyer is going to investigate it and they're going to come to their own conclusions about it. So you don't want to wait till you're in the middle of escrow to find out the answers. Well, before you ever put your house on the market, find out the answers so that you know in advance. You can plan around it. You can be proactive.
Okay, looks like I have 2 more. Unpermitted systems, what happens?
Nothing until you're caught.
Let's say you do.
Yeah.
Hide.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if there's not a problem. It doesn't matter that it's not permitted. But when the property changes hands, that's when it's going to matter. And even if it's functioning properly, I think this new point of sale stuff is going to require that it has some kind of a permit, some kind of a process to certify that it's okay. But yeah, until the property changes hands, there's really no problem with an unpermitted system. I will say that in the Burn area, and I don't know if any of you people live up there, but many of those homes didn't have permits. And so they have a process to help people develop their, redevelop their properties relatively easily, so to speak. But if there's no permit, it doesn't help.
I got a good story just from last week. I had somebody call from Bonnie Doon, and we went out and did a camera job on Bonnie Doon, and the couple, they're 92 and 94, and they want to rebuild their house and get back in their house. And so Cheryl Wong is the director up there, and a lot of people know about her. And so we went up there and did the camera, and he said, yeah, 1953, I hand dug this leach line. 1953. 1955 is when the planning department started. So it was before the permits were even given out. So Cheryl just called me this afternoon and said, we're trying to wrap this up and I need to write a little report out. And so I'm going to do that. And so, like I said before, 20 to 40 years, a normal leach line will last. How many years is that? 53. And it's still working. It's still working. Whatever he did with his pick and shovel, and he and his wife, it's still working, so things like that happen. It's always funny to see different circumstances, sometimes in 5 years, a brand new leach line will be shot for whatever reason.
Okay, and then one is, can you address homes built before 1980 with pits? What if they are near full, a tank pumped every 2 years?
I got it. Oh, I got it. Okay. I got it.
Let's see if you're right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. What? Okay. So I mentioned remediators, and it's a device that you put it in the septic tank, and it oxygenates, how do you say that properly, the water, and gets the bugs growing. If the pit is not clogged up with roots in the first 2 or 3 or 4 feet, I have had really good success over the years putting these in pits, in pits over and over again. And when you don't get called back, what does that mean? It's working. It's working. And so I just put in 2, and they're working. It's a lot like the systems that we design, that Eric designs, but it's about $5,000 instead of 60, 70, 80, 90 dollars.
Let me add one more comment to that. If you have a permitted seepage pit, I'm assuming you're talking about a vertical hole that is drilled into the ground 30 or 40 feet deep. If you have a vertical seepage pit that has been approved and your system fails, the new rules allow you on a repair, not any addition, no ADU, but just repairing the system with treatment, they will allow you to put pits back in. There's word out there that you cannot put pits in anywhere, and that's not true. You cannot put pits on new undeveloped property, even with treatment. But if you have a permitted seepage pit and it fails, with treatment, you can put in new vertical seepage pit. You still have to meet groundwater separation. You still have to meet all the other requirements. So there's testing required, but there is an allowance for that.
And that, with a little bit of an exception, if you're in La Selva Beach and you have a seepage pit on a small lot, residential lot, they're going to look very, very closely at that, because there's some, Soquel Creek has public water wells in La Selva, and they've had, you probably read about some of the issues they've had where they're getting a lot of pollution of those wells.
Yeah. There's always exceptions to Yeah, and that's where environmental health comes in. They, you know, we try to do the best we can and then go to them with things we read them on and go through the process.
Even with a lot of times when you go out and there's pits, it's because there's no room. It's either steep or there's really bad soil in the top section and they drill down. There's not a whole lot of, in quite a few areas, especially in the San Lorenzo Valley, it's too steep to put the amount of leach lines that are required. So the engineered system is, it fixes that because they're right on the surface within 6 to 12 inches of the surface. You can put a pressure dose system that really does a really good job if you get tired of smelling your own. And other people get tired of smelling too.
Two more.
Got 2 more questions. We recognize we're at 8, so if you have a curfew to be home, we won't be offended. But I think we've got a couple more questions back there, and then Ken and Eric are okay to stay a little over, so
Okay,
thanks.
during the droughts, did the drought fill leach lines with tree roots seeking water? Do you see that typically during droughts? I mean, I know it's just a little rain.
I had a system that in the fast perk sand in almost downtown Ben Lomond, and you could pour water on it, it would just go right down through. And there was a line of trees, you know, like little popular trees, you know, they're right down where they put the brand new infiltrators. They're a plastic chamber instead of a rock trench. They're a 3-foot wide plastic chamber that has, you know, it goes down in the ground and it comes out the sides. And they're usually within about 4 feet of the surface. And the owner said, this guy is a terrible septic installer. You know, in 5 years, it's already done. So he says, I just want you to put a new system in over there. So we put a new system in. And I said, you know, can I just look at your old leach line? I know you're pretty upset with this guy. I'd like just to open it up and kind of look at it. And I opened it up, and the 120 feet of these chambers were completely filled with roots on the bottom and all along the sides, all the way down where it was filled with water and it couldn't get out in the fast perk sand. So that's 5 years. Those trees, the root systems are just incredible on some trees. And so
One other comment on that. As beautiful as the redwood trees are, they are not your friend when it comes to the septic system. So the farther you can keep the trees away from your septic system, the better. One of the nice things about the rules in Santa Cruz County, and I don't know that it's in any other LAMP, is they have root removal as one of the repair options for your septic system.
I do them all the time.
Yeah, and so you can actually get a permit. Ken has to prove that it's a root problem, probably take pictures or whatever.
Camera, yeah.
But they actually have it in the regulations that it's just a simple permit as like a homing replacement to remove the root. The trees are disastrous for septic systems. They love water, and they know they can find it for hundreds of feet.
Okay, and then the last one, how much room does a wastewater system need? How much room would you need for wastewater systems?
How big is the house? I mean, it depends on what you're putting into it. Septic systems are sized based on the number of bedrooms in Santa Cruz County. So the number of bedrooms and the percolation rate, those two things are going to determine how big it is. So it's totally site specific.
But
Right?
So a drip system would normally be 20 feet by 50 feet. I mean, to give them some numbers.
Maybe for a 3-bedroom house.
Yeah.
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 And if
Is
you
it
have,
above ground? I mean, how do you visualize one of these wastewater systems? What do they look like?
oh, it looks like your septic, you don't visualize, I mean, you don't see it.
That's all
It's under the ground.
The lids have to be up so that the yearly maintenance can be done accessible really quick and easy, or if you have a problem during the year, the lids are have to be accessible at the surface.
And there are many different systems. The two primary ones that are installed in Santa Cruz County are the Renco system. That is a septic tank, and then it has a separate, I don't know, you call it pod or whatever that the treatment occurs in. And so the water is circulated between those two things. And that pod kind of sits up on top of the tank or where it's easily accessible. The microseptic system is much larger septic tank with 5 different compartments in it and 3 risers instead of 2 like on your septic tank now. But it's just a bigger tank. It looks like a big propane tank, basically.
And with maintenance, what's the lifespan of the $80,000 system?
It depends on how it's used, what you put into it. That one of the parts of that is that you're going to have an agreement with a service company. They have to come out once a year, make sure that everything is working. That report goes to the county, and if you don't do that, the county will send you a nasty letter saying, "Where's your report?" So there will be there's an ongoing annual fee, and then there's an ongoing need to have a service provider inspect it. That's a good thing because most people don't even think about their septic systems, and but it should last a long time. You have pumps, you have mechanical parts in there that are going to break down, but they can all be replaced. The tank won't decompose.
And the lead time, if Ken was gonna build something for you, the lead time, I'm sure you can't whip them out daily. If someone anticipates needing one, what kind of lead time should they anticipate?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, all of a sudden, the lamp requires for most everything to go through an engineer, and there's 10 engineers in the county, and so now they're inundated. So I always tell people about a year. I just did one. I had an escrow close in in February of this last year. They put $70,000 in escrow, and I got it through and installed by November 30th. Going through the whole process.
So the sale on the house can't be completed until the system is up to speed.
It depends on the bank. Tom was but this one, they allowed it. They allowed to put the money in escrow. The buyer bought the house, but they had a two signature check. Both the seller and the buyer both had to sign it every time I got money out to pay for the engineering and the tank.
So they could handle it in escrow.
The county, if you were a seller and you had issues during the sale process, and the buyer is willing, there can be a transfer of responsibility for the upgrade of the system and the enhanced treatment. Where that becomes an issue is, if you're looking at 6, 7, 8, 9 months down the road, is that okay with the buyer? Are they gonna, there's a certain amount of risk for that buyer. What if the system had ended up costing $100,000? Where would that delta be? And then if there's a bank loan involved in that transaction, that money if there's a credit happening, if there's money held in escrow, that will show in the closing statement, and the bank reviews that. And if the bank's lending a lot of money on that property, they may not feel comfortable taking the risk lending money on a property where the septic system is in question. So if it's a cash transaction and the buyer and seller agree, the county's fine with that. You transfer the responsibility, but there's a lot. It adds a degree of difficulty significantly, and it's one reason why being proactive. If you got a problem, find out about it now. You can even get started on some of the planning of it and then transfer, but have a shorter period of time.
And one more point about the permit process. If you have a failed system and you go to environmental health to get a permit, they're going to elevate that as far as getting it through the system. It's still not going to be fast, but it shouldn't be a year. If you want to put in an ADU and you want to modify your system to add something that's not there, that's going to take longer because those systems go to the bottom of the pile. And I think there's only 3 people now on staff that review these. So it's tough. It is really tough.
define a failed system, please?
And you can't flush the toilet, or you smell it outside, or your neighbors are calling environmental health complaining, and they knock on your door and say, you're gonna get a red tag if you don't fix this now, so.
Effluent on the surface somewhere.
What if it doesn't do that, but it's slow running? Is that
It's,
still failed?
it's almost failed, so it's time to act before it completely fails. Then every time you flush, it's gonna either back up into the shower or the bathtub.
Or a lot of systems, built in the last 30 years have risers on the leach lines, so that if you take the top off the riser and look down, if you see consistently a high water level in your riser, that could be an indication that the water in the leach system is not perking into the soil, and that you've got slow perk or soon to be no perk.
Yeah, the risers, it should be dry. Every time you look in the riser, it really shouldn't, you shouldn't see water.
Can I just ask one question about the remediators? Are those, what should I say, recommended for prevention? Or do you need to wait until it's
They
almost?
put a lot in Paradise Park.
That's what I'm talking about.
And you don't get calls back.
No, but I mean, so
Yeah.
you're doing it for prevention as
Well,
opposed
if
to waiting.
if it's failed and there's no place to put a septic system on most of the lots in Paradise Park, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I fixed over and over again, the systems. I do a lot of systems in Paradise Park. I don't think I fixed yours, did I?
No, mine's good.
So, a kind of quick popcorn question. Okay.
The system may still be working fine, but you might have a backup in the toilet, which could be with roots in a pipe leading to the system. I mean, that happened in my house. So my system was working perfectly, but there was roots in the pipe from the house
So,
that made it back
yeah,
up.
so what I tell people is when I started plumbing in the 60s, they came out with this pipe called Orangeburg. It was made out of trash. There was no glue. We had to put it from the foundation out. So if you have roots somewhere in, close to your tank, you got problems, because what we call it is a tight line. So it's tight all the way from the toilet all the way to the septic tank. No roots should be getting in there. If you got roots coming in on your tight line, then you need to have that whole thing looked at really carefully and replaced.
All right. So we understand there's definitely more questions out there in the audience. I also want to be mindful of time, especially your guys' time as well, and your time. So I'm not going to commit you guys to staying. If you guys want to stay,
we're
great.
here.
We appreciate it,
Yeah,
but
we're here.
we also understand you've been running around looking for granite tiles all day. So, so our plan is this, folks. Please email. Hopefully everyone's got Tom's email. Sorry, Tom, we're volunteering you for
It's on the sheet that was on.
questions.
Sure.
So if you have any questions that are remaining burning, please email getreal@sereno.com. That's Tom Brezsny's email address. And otherwise, feel free also to use the whiteboard option there, put your email there. We'll make sure we get your questions answered. Thank you all. Say what?
Taking care of the septic
Oh.
systems.
Taking care of the septic system.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
The handout, we ran out.
Oh, we ran out of the handout. Okay. So
Did you?
we might have. If we ran out of any handouts that are taking care of the septic system, please feel free to email us again, Tom, and we will email you guys those resources, because that particular one's awesome. Eric put together one that's just all the amazing resources, like Eric said, that the county offers. So there's too much information out there.
If they want to come up here and put their email address,
Oh, I have a quick question.
then I can. we can-
Perfect.
So invigorating. You may have trouble sleeping tonight. And this is India Joe's famous chai for your tea.
So if you can answer a trivia question, the first hand up that can answer the question gets this marvelous chai. Why is it that you can have a cup of tea at night and not get supercharged? Okay, oh shoot. Okay, it's because the antioxidants in the tea slow the caffeine down. Okay, what's an easier one?
I guess Terry's drinking chai tea tonight.
When was the first time that iced tea was served in the public? 1952.
Close enough.
All right, I'm gonna let Mr. Tom Brezsny here close this out, and then you all can hang out. We can talk about septics. But for the meantime, we're just gonna pass it to Tom to close this first of our homeowner series out.
Thank you all for coming. We really mean it. If you need some help, if you're not very well computer versed, we're happy to pull your septic files for you and either print them for you or send them to you as PDF. And if you want to be proactive about this, talk to us. We're happy to help you go forward. There's not an obligation with us. We're about the education part of this. So I hope you'll do that and reach out if you do need help. And on your seat was a list of some of the other talks we're going to be doing. There's so much information, there's no way to cover it all, but part of it is just to make you aware of these things and to kind of give you a few ways that you can broaden your knowledge and start to work on it so that you can be that responsible homeowner and responsible community member and not find yourself. The worst time to do it is either when when your system fails, suddenly you're trying to scramble and do it, and you find out it's going to be 3 months before you can do anything, or when you're in the middle of an escrow trying to sell your house. That is not the time to be dealing with this. Deal with it beforehand.
So, as Ken told me, you never want to be afraid to flush.
Never want to be afraid to flush.
So that's my line is, when I'm done with fixing the system, I go to the owner and say, you have no further fear of flushing. Go flush and take as many showers as you want because it's going to work.
Okay.
Well,
It beats it out. We're number one in the number two business. You can actually Google. There's whole websites with clever septic slogans in them if you want to amuse yourself. In fact, we should have used that as our raffle prize. I really appreciate Ken and Eric coming. I've learned a lot from talking to you guys over the last few days, and we're going to stick around if you have questions.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Lamp is saying that the seller is responsible for the cost of bringing the septic system up to snuff.
But did everybody hear that question? She asked if Lamp is saying that the seller is responsible for the cost of bringing the system up if it needs that work. Not necessarily. There's a provision where if the buyer and the seller agree, the responsibility can be transferred to the buyer so that they would do that after the close of escrow. And the buyer has to sign off on that so that the county knows that somebody's taking responsibility. And typically, I know this is the case in the sewer lateral, it has to be done within a certain time frame, so it can't be drag on for years after the close of escrow. The real question in that situation, though, is, what buyer wants to buy a house with that where you can't necessarily use fully one of its primary systems in its infrastructure, or if they're going to take that responsibility for a $70,000 system, I can kind of guarantee you that as a seller, that's going to cost you at least $150,000 off the purchase price. And you may lose a couple of escrows along the way, which is going to plummet your value even further. And when you just, particularly buyer's agents from over the hill that come over, they're pretty skilled at negotiating by using things that are wrong with the property to leverage the price down. And so the way I think about it is any information about your property that you don't control, the buyer's going to control it. And anything they come up with is going to be your disclosure in the future if that escrow doesn't go through. So they immediately have leverage over you in that transaction. So don't wait to the transaction to figure this out. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any other questions? Joe?
A larger overall question. Is there really a lot of evidence that this pollution exists? I mean, is there a baseline from long ago before when the bears were shitting in the woods and that was polluting the watershed? Is it worse now than it was? Is it, I mean, it's a done deal. We have to do all this stuff, but I mean, are we able to bitch about it, or is it just this is so?
There's a fair amount of evidence. I read through about 1,000 pages of studies this on nitrates and groundwater pollution and things. One of the things they've done is they had measurements they have public testing wells sites all over the San Lorenzo Valley and some of the other watersheds right now. So they have some comparative tests in terms of nitrates and E. coli and some of the other measured things from before the 1986 when the standards came into place and now. So they can see a pretty dramatic difference in some of the things that are in both the groundwater and the drinking water. So there are comparative tests. I don't know, I'm sure they could be more thorough, but all over the county there are testing wells. And then, if you're a seller and there's 8,000 private wells in the county. So if you have a private well and suddenly you're testing positive for E. coli on a regular basis or high nitrate levels, and it's not coming from your septic, that's a question mark about what's happening with your neighbors too. And that's
Fecal coliform levels in the ocean every winter are high. That has to do with septic systems. Fecal coliforms in the ocean cause disease in people, as well as increased nitrification of the oceans, which kills fish, brings red tide.
And it's rising every year.
And it's rising every year. So yes, there's evidence, and it affects drinking water as well as our ocean and our fisheries.
And to be,
Yes, there's evidence.
just to add, I mean, birds are also part of that issue, as they've measured.
Why
But
is it in the winter time it rises much more
Right.
when birds are there present all year?
Right.
So the fecal coliform levels rise during the winter time when the rains happen and the effluent comes from the San Lorenzo and other water streams.
recent studies say that the incidence of propane tanks floating in the ocean are greater in the winter time as well. Eric, did you have any other?
Well, I'll just make a comment to that. The Central Coast Water Board, if you go to their website, they have a link to what they call impaired waters, and they have done a lot of studies all over the Central Coast. I think all water boards have done the same. So if you ask a water board person, they would say absolutely there's enough information to say that these requirements need to be in place. San Lorenzo River watershed is a impaired water body, and it's based on nitrogen and bacteria. And I am assuming that most of that comes from septic systems. So, there's not a lot of farming up the valley, or legal farming, I guess.
Right now, there's Heather from Environmental Health said there's about 1,000 engineered systems in the county right now out of 28,000 systems. So there's not a lot, but it's growing. She said there's about 1,000
out of 27.
Yeah.
And are already up to speed with these treatment systems.
Yes. Because, in the 70s and 80s, we couldn't put systems in like this. People in the San Lorenzo Valley, for years, they'd be flowing across the road, flowing across the neighbor's property. When high groundwater happens, when the rain happens, it's bubbling out everywhere. It's gross. these systems work. And the system that we put in all the time, the GTS system, you can open up the lids and not smell anything. It's incredible. You can look down there and not smell anything. They really do a good job, you know, so.
We have one of those. It costs us 50 grand to put it in. So, no, they do work. And they have there's a component to most of the treatment systems for ozonization. So you can kill the bacteria too. So they not only reduce the nitrogen and reduce the organic BOD and suspended solids, but they also can eliminate bacteria. So they're expensive, but it is one way to help our water.
We'll organize a field trip to your house.
There's no parking there, unfortunately.
There's probably about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions, maybe 6. Should we just go?
Should be a quick one. I've heard with new systems, they're going to be monitoring your septic system remotely somehow, and you have to pay to have your system checked in on. Have you heard that?
Yes. Yeah. Each of these new systems have telemetry, so they are connected to a website that the county has access to. But you're going to be paying a service provider to maintain the thing. So I mean, there really should be no concern about it. There's a cost, but yeah, it is just another one of those, another fee, another part of the process.
But by the way, when you have one of those enhanced treatment systems or alternative treatment systems, it's going to be recorded. It's going to show up in the deed to your property, and as well as that agreement to have it serviced, every year or 2 as well. So that's it. Just going to run with the title in perpetuity.
Well, and the nice thing about the telemetry, it goes right to the service provider. He knows what's going on. They can come out and fix it. You don't even have to be involved. It's just an ongoing process that he gets the codes. He says, okay, I got to go out to your house and find out what's going on and fix it.
Move this way like a open fan.
Yes.
You recently added an ADU and added a septic upgrade to the septic system. And what I'm wondering is, if we go to sell in the future, is there any indication we have to improve the system itself? That system, which is now just have to be shown to be working well.
I don't understand the question.
Well, I certainly got the understanding that you have to have your system inspected as you go to sell. So ours is permitted for 2022, and I just wonder if we have to upgrade it again if we go to sell, or if that doesn't end up in the future.
He's asking if he has a functioning system that he just put in, are they gonna come make it change it?
No, there shouldn't, as long as you or the buyers aren't doing anything to change the number of bedrooms or the size of the house, as long as it's functioning properly. Part of that process will be to determine that it is functioning properly.
No, I understand the inspection. I just wondered if it have to.
If you can document that it's a recent system, you have the paperwork, the invoice was done by a reputable professional, and it's working, there shouldn't really be any issue in the transfer of your property. EJ.
Mine's kind of to build off of that, though. It kind of seems like they leave like a lot of gray for people that maybe have 20, 25-year-old systems that do work. Is environmental health going to provide more clarity as we get to July 1st for this point of sale as to what specifically needs to be inspected and what satisfies, this transfer of ownership?
Yeah. So if you're interested in being a part of that technical advisory committee team, there's going to be the county's going to implement a team or institute a team of people like us that are interested in that to help define what these regulations are going to be. We may not like them when it's all done, but yeah. So there's a website on one of those lists back there, how you get your name into that list. Because those details have not been worked out yet.
She said, yeah, that's what I said. I said earlier that they said they're going to start out slow. They're going to start requiring everybody to do the 20-minute flow test and have an inspection. But it's kind of required now. I mean, you should, as an agent, if you're an agent, get that done so that you can guarantee your buyer or whoever's buying that you're not going to have a problem.
2 years ago, Santa Cruz County implemented the sewer lateral inspection ordinance as a point of sale thing. And it was kind of the same thing, which is the regulations were written, and then it was kind of like they go into effect and then we figure out how it's going to work afterwards. So even when the county first came out with that ordinance, it did not allow for transfer of responsibility. And very, very shortly into the process, they realized after talking to a few, 94-year-old people that couldn't afford to do the work to sell their house, that wasn't going to work. So they very quickly put a transfer of responsibility clause into that. So what it's looking like to me, just from having talked through the Board of Realtors and their political action team, in the beginning, it was written as though the seller was going to have to fill out a 7-page disclosure about their own septic system, which no seller knows anything about that. And that was going to put them on the line to, with the responsibility of doing it. I think where it's going to go is that most of you are aware, there's an 18-page Santa Cruz County disclosure form that is a boilerplate form that warns buyers of the property all the possible things that could possibly go wrong with the thing that they're buying. So I think what they're going to do is stick a paragraph on that 18-page form and make it 19 pages. And it's going to say to a potential buyer who's got to sign that form that, hey, if you're buying a house with a septic system, you better check out this, 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 and this. And I think that's probably what we're going to come out with when July 1st rolls around. Yeah. And, when there's a couple of lawsuits, that always changes the regulations and the requirements. And one of the evil genius of putting it into a point of sale process is that it puts the liability on sellers agents, buyers agents. If something screws up, everybody's going to be suing everybody in that situation. And so it's using our liability as a leverage point to educate people to be truthful and to really do their due diligence in terms of what they're buying.
Right. I saw some questions back here. Jason.
Can you pull an equity line specifically for a $70,000 septic repair?
What
is banking keyed into? Okay, you have equity there, 70,000, fix it, then move forward.
You theoretically could. If somebody needs to get $70,000, they can pull it out of their house if they have enough equity, but that takes time, and they still got to do the work. And even if it's a failure and it needs to be fixed relatively quickly, that's still all going to take some time. And not necessarily a lot of buyers are going to wait around for 2 or 3 or 4 months for that to happen.
Here over and over.
5 for fees. Probably 10 for design and testing. It's been 15 or 20,000.
Agents are scrambling, everyone's scrambling.
That's it's definitely part of our concern.
So part of my issue as the contractor, I'm giving a bid not having a plan. Who does that? I mean, I do it all the time, but sometimes things come up, and I can look at the property and say, yeah, that we just did one for 65, 70,000. We can do yours without a plan. He comes and does the engineering, finds out that solid rock or really high groundwater, and it changes it and it ups it a little bit. But typically it's right around there. By the time you pay for the engineering and the fees, everything is that can go. Just the engineering and the fees are about $20,000 That's why I figure about $20,000 right off the bat before anything's even done. You know, so it's very difficult. I've had several times in the past where I've lost the job because I didn't want to give a fixed price on something. I don't have a plan. I don't have an engineer's stamp say this is what you have to do. You know, so it puts a contractor in an awkward situation. So the buyer on the one that I just was talking about, he wasn't worried about it, but the seller kept calling me about every week. How's it going? How's it going? Is it looking good? Are we gonna have to spend any more money? And I said, looks good. I think we're gonna find it. I came under, you know, so it worked out fine, you know, so.
You were mentioning remediators. Is that with the new ordinance that's coming
No,
up?
the county doesn't recognize them. About 10 years ago, the famous Ed Sutcliffe of the Honey Bucket, he and I worked together for a while, and then he decided to do something else. So he started me out on these remediators, looking at them, and I didn't use them for a long time, and then there was a pit or whatever it was. I thought, I'm always trying to help people save money, and most people don't have $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 sitting around. So I put one of these in, and then I didn't get a call back, and I thought, okay, well, it must be working. And then I put another one in, and I didn't get a call back, and I got a good response on somebody out in Corralitos. Just lost her husband, and she was frantic, and I put one in, and I didn't get a call back. And she called me back in a year. She says, thank you so much. You saved me so much money, and it's working. You know, so anyway, I enjoy doing that, and, you know, helping people and fixing it, you know, just making it work.
That's a short-term solution, but if you want to sell, then you're going to need to. Yeah.
As long as it passes the test. If it checks out and it's all the pollution, everything that's down there is cleaned up, the bugs have eaten it all up, what difference does it make? It's working. It's back working.
How long does it take to work? I don't have a problem. How long does it take to work?
They say on the website it takes about 45 days, 60 days, you know, 45 to 60 days, you know. It's been on how bad it is.
Pac-Man gotta get it back.
You're right.
Ken, you're not gonna retire anytime soon.
I'm not planning. I enjoy working, and I enjoy meeting people and talking, and
Good, that was the right answer.
I don't want to be drooling on myself, you know, any quicker than I'm probably wouldn't.
You need a reason to get up in the morning.
Exactly, and a reason to think.
I'm 80 and I'm not gonna. Wow. So, I'd be impressive.
74, so we're.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
Question, any other questions?
Quick 5 minutes. Are there there's always a shortage of contractors and engineers. Yeah, I don't know.
So that's why most you know, I work for a lot of agents, of course, and they'll always tell me, Ken, I've got this problem, you know, I said, are you in contract? Yes. Have you checked that? Have you checked the system out? No. I said, yeah, that's the first thing you do. That's before you do anything, get the second, because that is a red line. I got one story to tell you, but I got a lot of stories. But on Sims Road, it's like a fast perk, you know, soil, and so sometimes that works even against you, because if you haven't pumped, it clogs it up quicker because the sand is sucking it out faster, and it creates that layer that keeps the water in. So I went up to this lady, and she's living in her house with a sleeping bag, waiting for the escrow to close. All of her stuff is in Arizona, and the contractor had just put in. This is about 4 years ago. Just put in a new septic tank because the old one was bad, and at that point it was like $10,000–$12,000, and they did landscaping and the fence. So she says, I don't know what to do, Ken. I says, I don't know what to do. I just had this new septic tank put in. The buyer got cold feet and went down and talked to Cheryl or whoever was down at the planning department or the environmental health. And it actually was Cheryl. And Cheryl said, I would never buy a house with a 40-year-old leach line. And so the buyer called the agent and said, we're not going to buy unless we get a new septic system. Well, the new septic system was an engineered system. So here she was sleeping in her sleeping bag in the house with nothing else, waiting to get the check. and they ended up having to put an engineered system in.
They ended up what?
Ended up having to put an enhanced treatment, an engineered system. So she not only put the money in that, so it's really good to have foreknowledge of the septic system. It's because it's right now, it used to be for $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 you could fix the system. Not anymore. It's gone crazy. Cuckoo. Well, right now it's at the point of sale is the pumping and the 20-minute flow test, and that's a legal report. When they fill that out, they're putting their company on the line every time, because I had one of the pumpers said that the septic tank was good. 6 months later, after the buyer got in, he had it pumped again, and they said it had a big crack and it was bad. I ended up going and putting a septic tank in because he's a friend of mine, and one of his employees just missed it. So it was an honest mistake, but it still cost the pumper a new tank for the buyer.
The septic inspection and flow test is usually going to run $500, $600, $700. The price fluctuates because, and this makes sense if you think about it, the pumpers pump all the stuff into the truck, and then what do they do with it? They drive it down to the sewer treatment plant, and the sewer treatment plant charges them based on how many cubic yards of effluent they're giving to the sewer treatment plant. So if they pump more, then it costs more. If they pump less, then it costs less.
Well, and with the risers, with risers, if they have to dig, if a lot of times people will say, I have no idea where my tank is. So then we will get our camera, and if there's a clean out, you're supposed to have a clean out within 5 feet of your house, so that if you have a problem in your system, you can have the plumber with a camera go on the outside rather than taking your toilet off and getting down in there. And if you have a problem, it all happens outside rather than inside. So you can clean it, you can test it and check it out. So all those kind of things, to having your risers up close, knowing your system. I've been more and more putting pop-offs, especially in high groundwater areas for people, so that it's with your clean out, it's supposed to be within 5 feet of your house. You instead of having to take off a lid, it just has a lid that pops off. If the water starts backing up, instead of backing up in your house, it flows outside. You'd rather clean it up outside than inside, right? So that little pop-off valve, we put them in all the time. You'll immediately know when you have a problem because you'll be able to smell it, but at least it's not flooding inside your house.
And the septic pumpers don't want to dig. So if you don't have riser box, you should put them in. The pumpers are going to probably, even if they will do it, they'll usually charge you $100 an hour to dig. So
They won't go.
And just to let everybody know, I have dowsing rods, and I can douse for septic tanks